Okay, hello everyone. You're listening to pixelprojectradio, a video game discussions and analysis podcast. My name is Rick. I'm your host, as always. And today we talk Tomba, or Tombi, the first entry in the Tomba, or Tombi, duology, and the Soul games put out by Whoopee Camp, the studio behind Tomba, or Tombi. Up top, as always, I've got to thank the patrons. The patrons are the folks that keep my Tombis revved up and going. And if you want to know what that means, you can head to patreon.com/pixelprojectradio. You can see what we've got on offer there. Tiers for free, tiers for not free if you're feeling extremely generous. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. I want to introduce my co-host for today, first timer on the show. Wanted to reach into the nepotism bag. I went into the PPR family. Wanted to find another PPR member, another handsome gent, another fine, silky, mellifluous voice. So today we've got Georgie.
Mellifluous, I love that.
And there he is. We've got Georgie from Press Pause Radio. How's it going, buddy?
I'm doing great, dude. I do love the rollout there because essentially went Tomba, or Tombi if you nasty. So definitely dig that. Do you know, like, there's no concrete reason as for why they made that localization change? However, there is a suspicion to it. Are you familiar with that suspicion?
No, I'm not.
So in Italian, Tomba is the translation for tomb. So I assume because with PAL Markets, they're catering to the European region as a whole, which includes Italy. I think to take that into consideration, that's where they went ahead and put in the change.
All right, listeners, you heard it. We've got a real expert here. And we're both very excited to talk about this game today. Speaking of this game, if you are a member of the Patreon, and again, free, not free, whichever you're feeling, or if you're a member of the free Discord, it's only free. You can still give me money if you want to join. It just won't get you anything. You may have heard a recent episode where I said that the show's going to undergo a few changes, small changes. It's not going to change the show fundamentally. But one of the changes is adding in a little more of these games that aren't hyper story based. That's solely pragmatic, so I can keep doing this long term and not burn out, because it's just me back here on the managerial end. But also, some of these games have some terrific jumping off points, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to pick Tomba for today, partly because of nostalgia. We'll get into that in a moment. And partly, too, because I think there are a lot of interesting discussions to be had based on gameplay and presentation, especially once we get into the meat of what this is. So, speaking of, what the hell is Tomba, or Tombi, if you're nasty? Let me tell you, I'm Rick, I'm your host, or... I'm not going to finish that joke.
All right, dude.
Tomba, the titular Tomba, he is a pink-haired wild child back from an era when George of the Jungle meant something. I haven't heard of him in a long time. But, at any rate, he is a sort of semi-feral child who spends his days harassing the evil pigs and eating meat, relaxing. This is a 2.5D platformer that's got elements from various other genres. Metroidvanias, not that they were called that at the time, puzzle, adventure. We're going to get into that too.
I just think of Jeremy Parish and Sharky. Well, Sharky's out of the game, but Jeremy Parish, in fact, all funny enough because he's come full circle to Limited Run, publisher that's currently responsible for the modern distribution of Tomba. But back in the halcyon days of 1UP, that Metroidvania actually came out between him and Sharky. Sharky is the one who should be credited because Jeremy wanted to go with Castleroids, and it's just so funny. That fucking term really took off.
That actually segues pretty nicely into our personal histories. I'm not a big Metroidvania guy myself, so I know a lot of folks have strong opinions on that nomenclature. Mm-hmm. Sobriquet by any other name still sounds as pretentious. Whatever you want to call it, Metroidvania, adventure game. I don't care. I'm not really huge on those. Outer Wilds is the closest, I think, that I've gotten to one of those that really hooked me. But as far as personal histories and overall thoughts on the game, I had Tomba 2 as a kid. Tons of nostalgia for that game, tons of love, but I've never played Tomba 1. So I wanted to program it. That's part of the reason, of course. I knew that you were into that game as well, so I wanted to ask you on. So tell me a little bit about your history with Tomba. When did you first encounter it? If you want to talk about the sequel a little bit, if you want to talk about your feelings about the PlayStation 1, by all means.
So I was a Saturn kid, but
That's
at
right,
some
baby.
point Hell yeah. But at some point, I was able to get my hands on a PlayStation, mainly through the aid of my stepbrother. And if there was, around the time that we got it, if there was one game that really just caught our eye, and it's funny, I always laugh when people say that they don't recall Tomba or like it's something that slipped past their radar because like from what I remember, and this is just a kid in California with a game magazine subscription, which is a big crux of it, but also with cable television, this game was heavily marketed, like super pushed. Like it had its own series of PlayStation commercials that I remember having a bunch of like seniors or elderly folk in a neighborhood with fucking doled out pink hair, and the whole gimmick behind the commercial is that they just got hooked on Tomba. Bunch of game magazine adverts saying bacon isn't just for breakfast anymore. Like Tomba was heavily advertised. So like it, of course, when you see gameplay of it and like 2.5D traversal, like just quick snaps of the commercial, yeah, we wanted it. We ended up renting it quite a bit through Blockbuster before finally securing like a copy. So I still have my childhood copies of both
nice.
1 and 2. And yeah.
Nice. Those are worth a pretty penny right now, CIB. Last I checked, they were just north of $100.
Oh, yeah. They used to be way more. Thankfully, the redistribution of the game digitally and most recently new updated enhanced versions with physical releases through the boutique publisher Limited Run have greatly diminished some of the original value that the original copies for PlayStation held. And you know, that's a good thing. We remember, it's a good thing. These aren't investments, you fucking chodes. These are video games.
Yeah, we've got we have a small but strong camaraderie of folks in the Discord who are very passionate about collecting, of which I used to be a member. I don't really do that a whole lot anymore. How I played this, I guess that gets into how we played this. I played this on my CRT, on my PlayStation, through X Station. I have not had I have not had any experience with the remaster. I watched some gameplay online. I have more to say about that when we talk about the music. That's the biggest thing that I noticed personally. What about you? Did you play this on original hardware as well?
Yes. I actually play this game at least once every couple of years along with Shenmue, which is another like diehard favorite of mine. I'm dueling. And my most recent playthrough was the special edition. And I really enjoyed it. However, I got my copy for the PlayStation 5, and there were, of course, some unfortunate bugs that snuck past.
Sure.
The Switch version was the most ill-optimized of the sort, so I was really bummed for the folks that got that, but I believe some post-patches were to address that. The most egregious issue was a trophy issue. Tomba, like the meat and potatoes and very heart of Tomba is making sure that you round all of your corners, dot your I's, and cross your T's in completing and collecting or just finishing all the various tasks and objectives in the game. And of course, you would expect trophies to reward you for that effort. However, despite you doing it in game, the trophies wouldn't proc. So it was a couple months where Limited Run have to work with Sony R&D to approve another patch to send out and patch games that did complete the necessary objectives that would then reward the trophies. So I had a completed ass game with no platinum, and that really ruffled my gillies. So,
man, that is such a bummer.
It's fixed now, so now it's there. It's just,
Sure. So we do have a couple of community forum correspondents for today. Before we get into that, if I add anything in post, if I find any new interesting information, if I want to chime in with anything else, you'll hear this sound. That'll signify that future me is talking, just so we don't get our wires crossed. And while I have the floor, a couple of things. This episode won't be a beat-by-beat sort of deal. It just isn't that kind of game. I knew it would be a good one, though, because so much conversation about gaming and gaming design in general could bloom forth from it. And boy, did it ever. We may have gotten a bit long in the tooth. Also, throughout the episode, I'm going to sprinkle in some of the music from the remaster, that is the special edition. I think both OSTs have their pros and cons. We talk all about that later. We also talk about, and you're going to hear it, how the soundtrack is a lot of looping, short little 45 to 75 second cells of sound. You'll hear it. You'll hear it. It'll be great. Now, to take us back into the show proper, here is another one of the sounds you might hear as I exit and hand it back to past me. A sound I collected from the full sound library of the game, Tomba, found on internet website youtube.com. Now, speaking of the community forum, if you're new to the show, the community forum is a channel in the Discord where I post what we're talking about, games, maybe a topic every now and then, and the good community members can give their thoughts. We read them on air. You write them, I read them with great responsibility. You know how it goes. Shout out to these two as well, because my forgetful ass didn't post this until the morning of recording, 5 hours beforehand. And we had two folks come in really clutch. One of them being Poppy the Keaton, Discord regular, Quizmaster extraordinaire. Here's what Keaton has to say. Whimsy, such whimsy. Loved the look of this one. Only rented it once, but really enjoyed it. I think whimsy is a pretty good adjective to describe this one. It's pretty apt.
Yeah, and like I know I'll get more into it as we like start talking out and hashing out like the crux of the game, but as I've gotten older, I really believe that the main inspiration behind Tomba in Fujiwara's eyes, because he was the director, lead designer, like the dude was the boss hog, all puns intended, for this game. The main inspiration I hold to my heart true for Tomba is the original Dragon Ball. Like everything about Tomba screams Goku. The objectives, the various towns and worlds that you visit, and how you impact and interact with them just screams early serializations of Dragon Ball. Like the only thing that's genuinely missing to really make that comparison apt is the lack of a Bulma analog. But I believe that there are some other support characters that kind of fill in that gap.
Oh, yeah. You can really see it in different art elements, primarily, at least for me. The proportions of the facial features, obviously the way they draw the hair on Tomba, the way that they draw the reptiles, like there's a pterodactyl in this, I'm pretty sure. And like those in general. Not so much the eyes, but it is the proportions. Very, very Akira Toriyama inspired, most definitely.
And I would say new Akira Toriyama, because fucking Tomba be shredded. If you look at some of that original like official mangaka art, like motherfucker, you can shred some chi, some fucking straight Gouda across the abs. Like boy howdy, do some belly shots off that motherfucker.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know this, but that was cut content. I know you had mentioned you have some cut content to talk about a little bit later, but they were going to have a 18 plus DLC. Functionally, first DLC back on the PS1. Can you believe it? Where you get some NSFW Tomba. No, I don't know if I can make that joke. I don't know how old Tomba is.
we're going to like he's ambiguously like early 20s. That's I mean that's how Japan gets away with it. So
sure. And on that note, let's keep going. We have one more community correspondence from newer correspondent Genova's Child, who I have to shout Genova's Child out because they turned me on to a drink that I am drinking right now on mic. You're going to hear me. Listen to that. The sugar-free Red Bull iced vanilla berry. It is so delicious. Thank you, Genova's Child. Here's what they have to say. As a former feral child, I loved playing Tomba, a strange 90s artifact of its time that yet again put pigs in the villain seat. See also Star Fox 64 and Hogs of War. I can't tell you if it was a great game, especially by modern metrics, but I can say that it was an interesting one, and that's what kept me playing. Wait. Angry Birds also made the bad guys pigs. Is this like a subconscious bias that trickled down from Animal Farm?
Possibly.
That's not editorializing. That's Genova's Child wondering that.
You know, the 90s had a lot of different renditions of pigs and villainy. Do you remember fucking Barnyard Commandos?
No, actually, I have no idea what that is.
So Barnyard Commandos was another toy line cartoon property that was trying to capitalize on the popularity of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It had like a very short-lived cartoon that was meant to vehicle the promotion of these really like advanced and not very well articulated, but like kind of like the same proportions of Street Sharks action figures, all done by Playmates. And yeah, it's just pigs versus sheep. You know, they're also wearing like army fatigue and bandanas. It's crazy. Just YouTube Barnyard Commandos if you want to know why some of us in our age are the way we are.
And also YouTube Street Sharks while you're there. Not because it's related, but because Georgie brought it up, and I fucking love Street Sharks. Let's talk a little development of this game. Tomba, or Tombi, originally released in Japan first in December of 97, Christmas Day. Came to North America the following year in July, and the EU that next month in August. As always, full list of credits on the wiki, the IMDb, or in the game credits when you beat it, which, just in full disclosure, I did not. I know. But of note, you're going to see the following names. This was developed by Whoopee Cam, published by them as well in Japan. Sony handled the publishing in North America. The Whoopee Camp logo screen is practically load-bearing for my memory. It's been there for so long. And just so it's stuck in your head, too. One name you're going to see a whole lot associated with Tomba is Takuro Fujiwara, who is the creator, and also has credits as the director, the producer, the designer, and the artist. You might also know Fujiwara from Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts, as well as some others like Darkwing Duck, and I believe he was the producer for Resident Evil. Is that right, Georgie?
Yes. He was a major force alongside Shinji Mikami, Keiji Inafune, and all the other usual suspects over at Capcom. And yeah, his big seat at the table came from Ghosts and Goblins. Afterwards, however, he's been mainly worked in a more of a support role. But yeah, his other big contribution was for the original Resident Evil. And then at some point, he definitely left just because he felt creatively stifled and thought that he had the chops to kind of go it alone and bring a vision that he had to mind with Tomba. Like, this was definitely like a passion project that was stewing within him for years.
Most definitely. Yeah, that's what I had seen as well, that he just wanted to make his own IP, his own, let me stop using corporate speak, his own creation, and didn't feel like he could do that. But no stranger to difficult games, especially in the retro scene. What we now see is the retro scene. Somebody that worked with him quite a bit is the composer on Tomba, Harumi Fujita. She did a ton at Capcom throughout the 80s and 90s, just a few of them. Ghosts and Goblins, of course, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, Punky Skunk, Mega Man 3. She also worked a ton with Yasuaki Fujita as well.
Lots of star power here, and it also really goes to show that when he did make this departure, the man still did so absolutely under professional circumstances. Like, there was absolutely no animosity. And even then, like, the most recent collaboration between Whoopee Camp and Capcom came in the form of Ghouls and Ghosts Resurrection, which a lot of people did not realize until the credits had leaked that, like, Fujiwara, like, was there, and that it is the most recent example of Whoopee Camp branding that kind of inspired a lot of folks to, like, go, whoa, in terms of the potential return of Tomba.
And I'm glad that it did. I don't know. I'm going to say this on air, and folks listening in the future are just going to have to trust me that my opinion may have changed. But I do think that, you know, this was reviewed at the time pretty favorably by critics. It wasn't a failure in any sense of the word. But fans, like sales, it did not sell nearly well. I was reading that a lot of folks were surprised that they announced a sequel given the sales of the first one. And the sequel, Tomba 2, did, by most metrics, outdo the first one, but neither performed excessively well. And that's, you know, I can't imagine that wasn't a major contributor to Whoopee Camp deciding to hang up their jackets.
Well, Tomba, both of the original Tombas were Sony published, and while they didn't necessarily have a commercial success to really bolster like additional work or development on the property, as you had mentioned, it did definitely see critical success. I mean, at the time, Game Sages, or what would later become IGN, had awarded the game, I believe, an 8.7, which was, again, pretty, and I wouldn't say like remarkable, like it's not that rare. They did give some high numbers, but for a brand new property that was as experimental as Tomba was, it was still something. And like it had like I believe a fairly high, I think it got a flat out 8 from GameSpot as well. So like I believe that alone in Sony's eyes was enough to greenlight like work on the sequel. And of course, I don't recall if this was around the time that Bernie Stolar kind of stepped into PlayStation management. I believe kind of the impetus on what would later shift and transition the sequel Tomba 2 into a more three-dimensional escape.
Interesting. Pin in that, listeners. We're going to talk about that once we get to, I think, the presentation.
Yeah, Bernie was super anti-2D. So, and that's primarily why the Saturn didn't get a lot of its bangers, is because dipshit did not consider it to be a worthwhile investment or a software that would accurately showcase or demonstrate like the superiority of the Saturn just by the visual presentation of things moving from a left and right two-dimensional plane. So I'm fairly certain he took that idiotic mindset over to Sony when he later started working with them.
It is always so interesting to hear some of those radical takes. Well, radical is maybe a bit strong of a word, but some of those more contrarian takes, especially decades ahead in time, to see how things actually played out. Like, I can understand being in the moment and maybe feeling that way, but in a present lens, man, what a strange hill to die on.
It's just a weird thing because I don't think it's a sensation or necessarily a concept that translates in the last 20 years of video games. Like, you have to look at stuff like Mega Man X to Mega Man Legends and the years between that. We're looking at 91 to 95. That's a 4-year gap. So in terms of trying to really just pontificate the leap and the acceleration of video game tech and advancing that, and then showcasing and demonstrating what's possible, kind of, sitting back and innovating or reinvigorating like older, like more tired concepts may not exactly sell across like just how fast video games are advancing. And yet now, within the last 20 years, like in all regards, nearly, not just in concept, but like in visual and just performance tech, you can argue there's almost a little bit of a stagnation to where like the last 2 generations all show marginal differences that are only really set apart by like frame rate and I would say scope more than anything else, and that wasn't the case back then. So that's the only thing I can think of as far as like trying to really capitalize on like you're selling something as cutting edge, so why would you show off like things that people have already seen to some extent in just in a lower fidelity? Sure.
And video games are an interesting medium, especially for folks our age. I mean, you're a tiny bit older than me, but even still, both you and I, we were practically there when the medium was in its nascency. And like so many mediums that become successful, artistic mediums, that is, the beginnings, the exegesis of them, that's when you see a lot of really rapid development. And like you said, now we're kind of in this artistic stagnation. Well, no, we're in this technical stagnation. And man, that's a whole different conversation that I actually would love to program on the show at some point. So I appreciate knowing that you have thoughts on that, actually.
Oh yeah, me and my fucking wallet. Jesus.
Before we jump into the art style and the visual presentation of this, I want to give a little teaser of something we're going to talk about in the mechanics. There are two really nice, three, but two that I've linked in the show notes. Really nice interviews from Fujiwara. One from '97 when Tomba was contemporary, and one redone by the PlayStation blog right around the time that the remaster released. Which, by the way, just to keep everything on the level and honest, the special edition, published by, as you said, Georgie, limited run, July of 2023, that was on all contemporary systems at the time. Except for Xbox, of course. Sorry, Xbox. Mm-hmm. That was done through limited runs, special engine, which I think
Carbon
is
engine.
Which I think is just basically a souped-up emulator. Quick quote from Fujiwara. We're going to get into this with another quote a little bit later, but his passion comes from what he calls action games, and I think this is very fascinating. Here's a quote of what he said. He says, quote, "If we'd only made this game feel good to people who have always been playing action games, then I think that those who haven't would be stuck thinking, yeah, action games are too difficult, or I can't do this. If the speed is too fast from the start, then just the idea of jumping from one point to another will be difficult. People tell me action games are too difficult. So it's starting to seem as though the number of people who are able to play them is getting smaller." End quote. He conceives, Fujiwara does, of Tomba as an action game, and he goes on to give his definition a little bit later. That's just a little teaser, though, for when we get into the mechanics. For now, I want to unpin that pin that we previously pinned, testing my plosives real great there, and talk art style and some visual presentation. This game is beautiful. I mean, there's really no two ways about it. This is a beautiful game.
Absolutely, and I think it really showcases some of the technical performance of the PlayStation in terms of its texture wrapping, which you'll absolutely see once the camera starts panning through a dioramic pan, which again is mechanically diegetic to like the whole conceit of its 2.5D setup. Because as far as and like he's done multiple interviews, and I want to believe there was one other point. I think maybe he revisited this thought process like in a more modern review. He wanted to kind of create a balance that yes, action is the main crux, but exploration would be something that would suddenly be forced upon a player. Like he purposely set up certain obstacles or problems to be cryptic enough to where players will hit a wall, will have to search within their inventory, and will have to bump and grind against every nook and cranny. And he wanted to challenge that space and where it wouldn't just be left and right, but also forward and backward, and kind of making use of that concept within a 2.5D style that is used solely through like rendered sprites. And like it's a weird rendering too, because it's not like some of the AGI like tech that we would see like initially pioneered by Rare with Donkey Kong Country and Killer Instinct.
Right.
But it's got like a variation of, because like I mean we've seen other like fully rendered games, like even as from like several other developers like SNK with Prehistoric Isle 2. I believe you mentioned Punky Skunk. There's like some rendering there. It's one of those things that I believed, especially within the display tech at the time through CRT TVs, kind of gave developers more freedom to create the illusion of three dimensions, especially through round or spherical concepts and designs, and which you're going to see a lot of that in Tomba.
And that's the crux of it. It is all an illusion through the presentation and through the use of depth. And I think in Tomba 1 especially, this succeeds to varying degrees throughout the game. It's inconsistent in that way. I think it mostly succeeds. It's just very noticeable when it doesn't. to that end, to the idea of a 2.5D, I want to talk a little bit about that. But first, here's another quote. This is from the great site Shmuplations, from the 1997 interview that Fujiwara gave. The question was put to him. It's hard not to get the feeling that you've given yourself a big challenge here, especially with a side-scrolling action game like Tomba, which in today's market has the odds of becoming a big hit stacked against it. Fujiwara responds thus. He says, quote, "You're right. These days, there's an increasing number of games where you can move around in full 3D. However, the TV in TV games is a part of the experience, and I think 2D presentation is fundamental to that. I feel like 2D is able to let players feel the fun and excitement in a straightforward way. If you want to call it a challenge, then sure, it's a challenge, but rather than letting 3D graphics determine what we were able to do, I guess you could say we decided to prioritize making something that's really genuinely fun. That's one reason we went with 2D." He ends the quote there. He does go on to say in an interview about Tomba 2, just 2 years later in 99, right before Y2K, that they weren't able to really do what they envisioned in Tomba 1. They just didn't quite have it. To that end, I do think Tomba 2, if we're just strictly speaking of the way it uses depth and that sort of 3D environment, I think most would call it more successful. I'm more partial to the art style in Tomba 1, especially when it comes to Tomba himself. But your mileage may vary there. That's a taste thing.
Yeah, and like this is a really weird sort of era in experimenting with that. And this around the time, like the proximity of release between Tomba and Klonoa is fascinating because like they released within months of each other, yet they went in completely different directions. Yet they're, in terms of intersecting planes and how the background and foreground basically interface for gameplay, completely vary from that of Tomba, and where I believe, while fascinating in of itself, because you still have to take everything in scope of what's seen in the foreground and background into consideration with Klonoa, it pales in comparison to how Tomba evolved that concept. Because at some point, and like again, it is genuinely fun, but as far as experimentation and kind of just doing what you can, the game direction, and I believe Fujiwara just really, really wanted to make things cryptic, almost sometimes to a fault, is there's not a lot of carrot in the stick. Like there's like hints of a carrot and ideas that are presented to you, but then you really have to play around and familiarize yourself, which is why like
yes.
I believe that the biggest thing that hurts Tomba is its low replayability. Like I just love it because it brings back the fuzzies and it's great. And like there's still fun to be had and there's still things that can change or whatnot. But once you are familiar with the ebb and flow and what to do and which event to prioritize, it is a very streamlined venture that, if anything, the only thing you can do from that point is challenge yourself to speedrun it, which really goes back to the skill-based acumen of Fujiwara and like a lot of the arcade titles, Ghosts and Goblins included, that he made his bread and butter on.
The cryptic aspect is a big point of friction with a lot of people, myself included. I can appreciate it in theory, but in practice throughout the game, there were points where it was just needlessly frustrating. And unfortunately, that's kind of why Tomba and Tomba 2 sit in that bin in my mind that's full of games, music, TV shows, whatever, that I do love. I just don't want to revisit, if that makes sense. I love the memories that I have with them. I love thinking about them, but going back to do it, especially with Tomba, can sometimes feel like a bit of a chore. And some of that for me with Tomba 1 did in fact come from the way that they use the 2.5D environment. And I want to talk about that super quickly. So 2.5D, that can be defined differently by different people. It's a very vague and sort of nebulous term. The way that Tomba functions, Tomba 1, I should say, that is kind of truly what I consider to be 2.5D. It's largely 2D in its presentation. There are no 3D models like in Tomba 2, for example. Or Clockwork Knight maybe is another good example. Maybe
Clockwork
but
Knight is absolutely a 2.5D game, and mechanically and presentation.
So it's largely 2D in the sense that Tomba is a 2D platformer. You're going left to right, that sort of thing. But they utilize depth. So you can go into the background. You can jump into the foreground. And that creates, as you said earlier, Georgie, as we had both alluded to and as Fujiwara intended, you get this illusion of a larger 3D world. That sort of creating those illusions was a big part of the creativity in these earlier days when folks still had the vision, that they do today. It's not like people back then weren't as creative, but they were butting up against the constraints of what they were functionally able to do with technology. So you got a lot of these really clever workarounds and, as everybody has said, illusions. But however, with that ambition does come, sometimes there's a feeling that they had so many plans that sometimes they just couldn't execute on them so well. And the depth thing is a good example in Tomba. It's and they fixed this to their credit in Tomba too. It's just not always clear when you should or can jump from background to foreground or foreground to further ground, where you are to the back, where you are to the front. It's not always clear. And in fact, sometimes it is really ambiguous. Strangely enough, the opening area has one of the less obvious examples of how to do it. Like you can clearly see pigs in the back. There's a fence separating the foreground from the background. That's right. Obvious, but it isn't entirely obvious where exactly you jump over there. There are much clearer examples moving farther into the game. And that's part of what I mean. That's not the most egregious by far. That opening area actually, by and large, serves as a really good tutorial, telling you how to play the game, both through signs, NPCs, and kind of just letting you safely experiment in a low stakes environment. In that way, it's a very good opening. But that foreground to background inclusion, that idea of depth that makes 2.5D 2.5D, if you ask me, wasn't handled necessarily. It was handled clumsily throughout. Sometimes it was great. Sometimes it was very effective. Sometimes another area that I'm thinking of is that goddamn mansion, the haunted mansion. Sometimes not so much. I don't know if I'm off base with that. You have so much more familiarity with this game and with these retro games. So
the mansion is unfortunately, like, I believe, some of the more obtuse, especially when you progress in the game to the point where the curse is lifted, and that does affect various paths that can open and intersect within the mansion, as well as the various abilities that Tomba can obtain to progress further, such as swimming.
Right.
But to your point, and this is me putting on my tinfoil ass fucking devil's advocate, like I'd be cooking my fucking bubble goose here, so bear with me all if it seems far-fetched. All right, whatever. To your point in regard to the ambiguity and the cryptic nature of whether you can interface within the early setting of that starting area, I believe that there is some intention behind that ambiguity, only because a big part of Tomba in really emphasizing like the nature and breadth of his world is that you'll need to backtrack. It's a Metroidvania.
Oh yes.
So I believe that basically creating a little bit of an artificial wall and then putting players in a position to where they understand, oh, this is what I do, because at some point when you reach that ending plane, you will come across a canyon that you can gradually climb upwards because you are literally walled off from proceeding any further to the right. And then realizing that, oh, there is a small little camera pan that like just subtly hinted that I could do this. I vaguely remembered seeing that at that initial house in the beginning, as well as I wonder if that like piece of wall at the very start of the game by the mailbox would allow me to do so. And sure enough, it does. I feel like a lot of the ebb and flow of the game is trying to recognize or hold on to various points and landmarks that you may have not figured out from the initial start, and then getting the contextual clue at a later point, incentivizing that, hey, I should revisit that. And a lot of the time, that's exactly what you need to do. So
Right.
I believe that there's some intention behind that.
Oh,
and
yep.
well, no. The only thing I just wanted to put is in terms of 2.5D, I don't believe also that it was a direction that was done from. It was not born from the concept of technical constraints. Like 3-dimensional games were absolutely possible and were done. I just do not believe that in the public mindset. And again, you have to really like zoom in around the time that, like, aside from Super Mario 64 and some other notable examples, like the concept, in a public space was still very new. And trying to do something that was driven like on an engine of doing, and I remember, like, what was it? I believe Bill of GNC Podcast kind of like made the term apparent, was the FedEx Quest. Because that's a lot of that in this game too. Doing that in a world that feels larger than it is, I think it's easier to translate into a dynamic where depth is more controlled and something that's better able to translate to a public that's still getting used to the fact that games are advancing to this. So I believe it was done with just accessibility in mind and kind of recognizing the times and where, we're not there yet in a public capacity for 3D games, not entirely. So if I really want to deliver my vision, I should try it through this approach.
Yeah, and I apologize. I probably misspoke as I tend to do. That's not what you had just said. That's not entirely off base from what I was trying to hint at. And then of course too, I mean, Fujiwara said it himself. Where did he say it in this quote? That's one reason we went with 2D. We've decided to prioritize making something that's really genuinely fun. It also sounded like that was sort of just his preference, and that's there's something there too. I mean, you can't account for taste, et cetera, but letting creatives work within the confines that they enjoy, rather than, say, forcing him to make a 3D game, to, quote, determine what they were able to do, I think you're going to get a better result. So my apologies. I definitely did misspeak there.
Oh, no, dude, that's my bad. I apologize.
But me? No, I don't apologize. No. In this semi-fictionalized version of the podcast and me as a character in it, I have future knowledge because I am from the future, and like all people of the future, I am superior to the past and its peoples in every conceivable way.
I just wanted to make sure that, because like it, there's a confluence of whether or not like games were designed for the sake of like technical limitations, and it's not always the case. Sometimes there's definitely a more creative reasoning behind it. We've seen plenty of examples, like as early as 94, of games expanding or experimenting with 3-dimensional space untethered. Like, dude, as early as fucking Highlander for the Atari Jaguar CD. Like, it was there. It wasn't necessarily done as well or as polished as later examples, which is like that's the whole gist of it. Like, kind of working within a scheme that makes sense both, from a development standpoint and a player standpoint.
Most definitely. Yeah. I'll tell you the roadmap my brain went to misspeaking the way that I did. First of all, I was just like, well, 2.5D is in the middle of 2D and 3D. And I just chose not to think more about that. But also, and I think we've both said this too, and I think Fujiwara hinted at it, honestly, or does in these interviews. Their vision, his vision, their vision, it was just, I think they realized they just couldn't do it in the current environment of 3D. And rather than making something, that they weren't proud of, they're like, well, let's do something closer that's maybe in 2.5D and also very, very cool.
So cool.
Before I forget too, this is kind of a pivot. I wanted to touch on, you had used the adjective intention. There is an intentionality. This is something I argue with myself back and forth on. I agree. I think Fujiwara and his team are asking a lot of players, or not asking a lot, putting a lot of trust in the players to see those clues as they're moving forward and then saying, oh yeah, I remember back in the beginning and I couldn't get up there. I wonder if I could do this. And oftentimes that's exactly what they're wanting you to do. I think and I agree with that, by the way. Like, I think that is valid. I think that's a really cool, I think that is a good thing to do, to put trust in your players, viewers, readers, whatever. Your audience isn't dumb, you know. They're, generally speaking, they're going to be on the same level, if not, you know, sometimes a little more adept than you are, whoever you happen to be in that creator sense. But part of me that argues with that is that a lot of that backtracking is pretty significant. Like, you are going to be expected to catch something, whether it's an item like one of the evil pig bags to get one of the evil pigs, or this, you know, scaling a cliff like you had mentioned. A lot of the times those revelations come and you're expected to sort of, I don't know, maybe that's a little too strong. You're expected to sort of backtrack across a pretty significant portion of the game to unlock these new areas. And I don't think that's inherent. Personally, I don't think that's a bad thing. I know some folks do. I think it's more of a taste thing, and it's just not for me. But that's sort of how I argue with myself back and forth on this. I don't think it's bad game design in any sense of the word. I think what it comes down to is it's just not my favorite flavor. I think at its core, it's just, you know, you have to be cool with backtracking pretty significantly. If you don't find buku, what do you call it? Charity feathers, the warp feathers.
Well, there are charity feathers. Then there are also the old men bells, and plotting points. And then at some point, through progression within the side quests, which again, a lot of them, are absolutely optional and really have no crazy material impact on the game other than just completing a certain percentage, which, you know, numbers make pew pew brain go up. Pew pew. There is a satisfaction in, you know, sometimes the journey over the destination, at least in my humble opinion. There are quests that you can also fulfill that make fast travel through various checkpoints on the map even easier. And like, I don't know how much of the game we can really break down or discuss, because I do hope that the podcast inspires people to really check out the special edition. And like, I would say that in terms of exploration, there are some annoying parts, but like, again, I really feel like it's one of those things that's almost done by design. Like, I mean, you can think of any open world, literally any like Citizen Kane ass game that comes to mind, any of them, they're all going to come with their annoying section. Because again, like, spectrum of feeling shouldn't always be good. Yeah, there should be annoyance. There should be friction. Ocarina of Time, Water Temple, Banjo-Kazooie, Clanker's Cavern, or Rusty Bucket Bay. Like, and here in Tomba, Haunted Mansion. Like, you can go on and like think of your favorite game. There's always going to be like a certain area or event of friction where you're just like, this shit sucks. God, I hate doing this. And that's the point.
Ooh, I agree with you in principle that friction is valuable and good. I just saw a thread yesterday in another Discord that was very tedious to read, of folks talking about friction in games. And man, I should have noted some down because it could have been good for this. But I do think friction can be very valuable. I think hostility can be very valuable. We just wrapped up an episode on Lisa the Joyful, and that series is explicitly hostile towards the player. I don't think the friction here is intentional, though. I think the design of backtracking, I think the design of trusting the players to catch something the game is teaching you and remembering back, you know, an hour, a day back to what you were doing before. I think all of that's intentional, and I think that's good. I don't think the friction is intentional. And I think that's a very minor point, but I think it's worth articulating, especially because nowadays, and I don't know if you'll agree with me and join me in my old man yells at cloud rant, but I think a lot of I could phrase this in a way that makes me sound like a total asshole, like all gamers nowadays are soft. But I think there is such an aversion to feeling challenged in a way that isn't just strictly mechanical. I think there is, and this transcends games too, into like literature, especially in music. Oh my God, in music too. But I think modern audiences have a stronger aversion to friction and to working. Just cut it there. Make me sound like a crazy a fucking right winger. No one wants to work anymore. But I hope I'm trying to be too funny and too glib, and I'm not articulating myself well. What I'm trying to say is that I think friction, challenge, and not that constant feel good, yay. I think that is incredibly valuable. I'm with you 100% if I'm understanding you correctly. And I think modern audiences,
you are.
I think modern audiences are more averse to that than I think.
Well, in my opinion, I feel like that's why a lot of the games that are played, like there's an interesting point in where looking at some of the figures and data analytics for like when is a game abandoned, at what point, why is it abandoned, and then kind of examining the player journey from start to that point of abandonment. What sort of elements could have been involved or could have influenced that departure? You kind of got to look at stuff like quality of life and Breath of Fire, for example, like that's a game that could use quality of life in today's standards. I think we have now kind of acclimated ourselves to wanting to take advantage of gameplay that can work at a more efficient and more flexible pace, and some of us just don't necessarily have the time or energy to invest in it just because of like the increased toll on our day-to-day lives outside of video games. And you know that there could be discussion for that there, because I mean, think of the player base that's sort of aged with the medium, and then one thing that we never really look at is a younger generation and them revisiting older games and then them being able to parse. Like there's a big point of contention on whether or not something's quote unquote aged well and the merits behind that. And that could be like a whole different topic of discussion in of itself. But discussing like what quote unquote ages is just sometimes it's a bit pretentious, because for all we know in future generations and how play styles evolve, everything we could be doing could like feel like fucking spoiled milk to like generations beyond us. So kind of having that case of judgment on stuff prior and trying to reevaluate it from present day lens versus the lens of what age we were and mindset we were when we played it, it's difficult, which is why like discussions like this kind of parse and kind of just look at design for what it is and understand that like sometimes that's okay. Yes, I believe you and I are on the same wavelength, and I think that a little bit of friction is okay, and being able to balance that to the quality of experience and how players feel by the end of their time with the game, mileage may vary, but like it's important to kind of have that there in order to incentivize or encourage play, because at the end of the day, video games started as a contest of skill. Not to say that they're solely like that, but even then, we all invent those little milestones. Even in a cozy game where there's literally no pressure, there's no shot clock, there's nothing other than like you putting upon yourself invisible metrics, invisible. I don't want to say objectives. You're putting upon yourself like completely weightless objectives because you are challenging yourself at your own pace. That is going to be challenged on a spectrum of skill entirely of your own choosing. The game didn't even present that to you. So at the end of it, it's how we play and how we digest video games. I think some games definitely do it way better. Some games don't, and some are broken in how they do it. And thankfully, I don't think Tomba's one of them. And like, that's why I don't want to try to get defensive, but I'm just like, I just want to make sure that criticism's lodged at the merit of the game, because there is one big facet of the game that, as much as I love it, sucks, and like is like one of the parts of the game that I believe is improved with the sequel.
Oh, I hope I'm not making you feel defensive is the bigger thing.
Oh, no, you're not at all. I want to make sure that I don't come off that way.
Oh, sure. No, believe me, there are plenty of games that I like, books that I like, music that I like that aren't necessarily beloved, and I know what it feels like to get a little defensive, even if you don't want to, because you love something, and in some ways that is a reflection of who you are.
Yeah.
There are so many good conversations to bloom out of this, and it's very exciting. I noted one down here at the top of our shared document, but this is awesome. I do want to say, before I want to get into mechanics so as to not totally abandon Tomba and upset some listener base. But before we move from presentation, I do want to call out the colors, the color palette. It's very pleasant. It works extraordinarily well on a nice CRT. I tried this on like a 25-inch RCA. I tried it on a 13-inch PVM. It looks so good. It pops. The colors, well, actually, I mean, we were speaking about Dragon Ball earlier. The colors aren't necessarily like super complex and blended all the time. They are very bright, simple patterns. Tomba's hair, bright pink. His pants, green, until you get different color pants. Pigs, nice and pink. Grass, beautiful green. It's pretty simple in that way, but it pops really well. It's something that kind of reminds me of like how arcade machines used to design their games, just bright, simple colors to grab the attention of folks to come over, put the quarters in. Except, this isn't trying to attract you necessarily, but it still kind of does. When I see Tomba, I want to look at it. And there is some differences. I don't know if you have experience with this. There are some shading differences that are very subtle in the Japanese and the PAL North American releases. That I can notice if they're side by side, but if you ask me to notice like playing one today and the next tomorrow, I don't know that I would necessarily, notice it too much, but they do exist. I saw it, I thought it was cool, so I thought I'd bring it up.
Oh yeah, and like I think they're again going back to the intentionality of the game. That also, in my opinion, extends to the colors, because for all of the bright presentation in like the main cast or supporting cast of the world, there's a juxtaposition in like what is muted, again, for the diegetic purpose of drawing attention to something as a means to kind of drive a point of interest for exploration. And like these are all things that again are subtly done, because there's no clear signpost that really just drives you to explore or examine like something initially. It's all about kind of picking apart your environment, and a lot of that's done really well here. It's kind of also done in a sense where the game is entirely dependent on depth. Like I feel like this is something that I've seen or just examined from like Japanese art tastes for kind of presenting or showing a world, and like there's a element of diorama like that's really put in, and especially you see that like referencing what you had just recently discussed with Bill in terms of 3D Dot Game Heroes, but even kind of going forward as more recent as Fantasian. Have you ever played Fantasian?
Oh man, goodness gracious, it's been downloaded on my PC for ages. I just haven't had a chance.
Yeah, but like being able to kind of showcase like something that has a visible entry point, in which case that being the front-facing view and perspective that we're presented Tomba in, and then seeing layers upon layers, the parallax. Colors make a really big difference in presenting the depth of something, and being able to present something front-facing and front and center to kind of showcase the distance that your brain kind of perceives, and being able to then lead or otherwise provide areas of review, access, navigation, and examination to kind of lead off into more secret areas. Like, again, going back to that initial area near the end, there is a hidden path that you wouldn't necessarily assume at like cursory glance. You kind of got to bump a little bit because it's shadowed off. But the presentation of the shadow does kind of allude that there's potentially more of a light source that like is they kind of like, it briefly alludes that, hey, you know, I can keep going here. And like a lot of that is absolutely carried by the excellent palette that this game has used. And yeah, dude, I have a JVC 27-inch D series. I've got a Sony PVM 20L5. I've got a Sony 81Q, and I've actually, as recently, it's funny that you mentioned that, I decided to boot up the game on my PlayStation Classic through means that are not necessarily savory. On my HDMI Samsung CRT TV, and even then, where like it's unevenly scaled because it's a fucking 30-inch TV, it still finds a way to like really take advantage of its palette and really just renders like so pleasantly. So yeah, no, 100% all the way. I couldn't agree with you more.
And this is purely going off of very old memory, but I don't remember Tomba 2 succeeding as well in this regard. I could be misremembering completely. I could be associating 2D
it's
graphics.
Definitely darker.
Yeah.
It's definitely darker. And like Tomba 2 is far more polarizing because there's a lot of people that prefer it over the original. And then there's some people that absolutely detest it. And then some people just immediately wrote it off because they're like, oh, it's a 3D game. I'm like, it's not a 3D game. It is still very much a 2.5D game. You're still moving on two-dimensional planes, except now everything is fully rendered in a 3D capacity. You are in a fully realized 3D world that, if anything, has been super limited. It's kind of taken the concept of restraint for challenge to a whole different level. And then like more of the top-down areas that are from the first one are now fully realized in 3D. So it's very much an evolution of the original, but still works to that same effect. And if anything, some of the points of experimentation have kind of been removed because, as you mentioned, the areas of interest to where you can interact with the foreground or background are signposted. They're literally with floating arrows that give you an idea. I'm like, okay, I can go this way or that way. Something that, again, the original Tomba did not have. It's very much you kind of like, I wonder if I can do, okay, I can. But I like the art style. I like Tomba's design, I will say, in the second one, because it does definitely recognize his like fucking Toriyama ass shredded bod. Like that is very much his little Goku ass Son Gohan. Like you can definitely sizzle some bacon on that torso.
So we talked around mechanics a little bit. There are some more things to mention, though. Fujiwara, I had read that quote earlier where he had mentioned action games, and he kind of considers this an action game. And he expounds upon that in the Shmuplations interview. I always do that because everybody does. Here's what Fujiwara says, and this is a couple answers folded into one just for brevity. He says, quote, "It's the feeling of the action. That's really where it begins and ends for me. I mean, there are lots of different types of action. For example, you can think of side-scrollers like Super Mario Bros. As kind of being action games, and fighting games are by nature action games. Of all the different games we have, I think action is the most all-encompassing. In short, if you're required to move something on screen in order to achieve a goal, that's an action game." That's bold. What the player wants to do, that was editorialized, by the way. Here he continues, what the player wants to do is reflected in the character. They do what you want them to do. That kind of situation of being able to perform the action the way you want to is essentially what I wanted to achieve. End quote. That's fascinating because I know, well, one, there is the very obvious conversation here about how genres can be very nebulously defined and sort of hazy, opaque, and etc. But I know a lot of folks have problems with the physics in this game. I didn't necessarily, particularly the jump physics. I didn't necessarily. I didn't think it was that difficult to control at all. But I have heard that as a critique, that folks don't feel like it controls like a more precise platformer of the era. I don't get that criticism personally.
I can see it a little bit. The momentum is tricky. Like, it's definitely something that you have to acclimate to. And while, again, I am fully used to it and have mastered it objectively, I will say the clumsiest aspect of its platforming and physics have to do with the swinging action. Because at any point that you are swinging from posts that allow you to windmill towards other posts, point of contact and trajectory and positioning is trickier than hell if you don't know what you're doing. And often, again, going back to the tutorial level or the early area, all stage and set over like precarious spikes that will fucking take you out like within touch of, like, I believe it does like 2 segments of damage like per contact. Like it's rough. Like I can see that even killing like any desire for somebody to keep going. And it only gets rougher when you go through Phoenix Mountain.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, but like once you have like a grasp on where you can make contact and how you can aim and sort of move, because the secret is like other platforming games that use similar mechanics, people are used to the fact that like the moment you make any sort of physical contact, regardless of whether it be your torso, your feet, et cetera, that you would automatically magnetize to that post, rope, whatever the object may be, and then move on. But Tomba is very matter of fact in where you need to make the contact with his outreached arms. They need to be the thing that touches the post or rope. And when he jumps, I mean, to its credit, when he jumps, he fucking Supermans. He goes, yeah! So like it is very much something that you can kind of attune your play around when you realize that like he jumps like that each and every time. So like I know where to aim and steer that point of contact that's needed to get that jump going. But aside from that, no, it's that, and then momentum. There are some wide gaps or areas where you need to run and you don't get the run right away. That is a skill that you need to learn, and the modifiers involved with it can give you fucking full mastery of the land and air, but also make you an unwieldy NASCAR-ass fucking vehicle of destruction, mainly your own, because you will steer around and move at a velocity that's too hard to control, often throwing you right into enemies who will make contact damage with you, hazards like fire or whole bottomless pits, and before you know it, you're fucking dead. So then you got to slow down and kind of move with a little bit more planning and purpose.
Yeah, definitely not a Sonic-style platformer where you can just zip through and be mostly fine.
Yeah,
I suppose to the credit, though, like you had mentioned the grappling onto onto ledges, which far and away was my biggest point of frustration with movement, unless you consider the placement of enemies around pits related to movement. But I couldn't nail like jumping from ledge to ledge if you're doing the windmilling like you had mentioned. I was not able to consistently nail that unless I tried to land on top of it and do like the video game kind of free fall in super slow-mo to either side. I really couldn't get those unless I did that.
Right. And if you kind of like plinko it, like what you mentioned, and steer it to where you fall opposite of your hands gradually like sliding into position to make contact, you can do it that way too. It gets a little bit more difficult when you get the grapple jack item, where you are then able to use that to clip onto ledges, points of interest like posts, or even flying enemies. And again, kind of learning to maneuver that and realizing that it's super context sensitive that you make the point of contact with the grapple point of the grapple jack. That's how you get around with platforming, but that's the challenge of it, because again, other contemporary games didn't necessarily demand like that much precision.
And to the design credit too, when it comes to the flying through the air, the climbing, the jumping across stuff, I feel like they gave you ample number of climbable, scalable surfaces like walls. Various parts of. I'm thinking of the flower seesaw plants, like in one of the
the mushroom forest.
Yeah. There is really no shortage of those. There's really quite a bit. You can cling to far more than I was expecting. Which is nice. Do not get me wrong. It is very nice. What I do also appreciate and also got a little frustrated by, if we're talking about mechanics insofar as movement, is that the game gives you plenty of lives for the most part, as long as you're not just trying to beat the game, quote unquote. You will pick up plenty of lives, so death is not like falling down a cliff or whatever, chasm. It's not really the end of the world for you as the player. Tomba's immortal in that way.
You can game over pretty quickly.
That was the next point, is that the lives that I lost, the times that I lost the most amount of lives were because I was trying to do a jump, and because I couldn't see where an enemy would be, and then suddenly, boom, there they are, I get hit. Tomba has this knockback animation when he does get hit that sends him back like a few steps every time, and you cannot, that just happens. Mm-hmm. And those enemies, particularly in the mushroom forest, are just always positioned exactly so. They're going to hit you. You're going to do that knockback animation, and it's going to send you down into a hole, into a cliff, and that's one life gone. And yeah, you just start at the middle, or not the middle. You start at the beginning of that screen, so it's not like you lost a ton of progress, but that's going to eat up a life. That was the frustration for me.
Unfortunately, there are pain points because yes, there's the Mushroom Forest, Phoenix Mountain, and those are more of the skill challenges versus like the cerebral ones that come later with like the Haunted Mansion and the jungle. And the jungle's honestly a mixture of both. I feel like at this point, and again, it doesn't clearly state this, but this is where you kind of have to ask yourself whether or not you want to really go raw dog it, or if you want to take advantage of the saving system that the game puts in place through its signs and just save scum, in where that based on previous experience, all right, this area sucks. So if I'm going to go through it, I'm going to need to save at the signpost here. And then that way I can give it a few trial runs. And once I get a better feel for it, I can then load up from my previous save. And then That's also what makes Special Edition really important. Special Edition offers a flat out rewind. So it really mitigates a lot of those incidences where you are sent to an untimely death from knockback, or you didn't make contact with the platform like you should have. That kind of really make it far more accessible and far less tedious to navigate.
Tedious is a great word. If I'm going to die, I'm fine with it. I just want it to feel like my fault.
Yeah. But again, these are very early growing pains, because when you earn various new skills and items, platforming and maneuvering becomes a whole heck of a lot easier. And, Tomba still has there's still things that you can do to kind of mitigate that, even from the early set, like the Mushroom Forest, for example. I know exactly what you're talking about. The miniature flower enemies that Tomba's main form of attack is to jump on top of an enemy, and then once he jumps on top of an enemy and fucking bites down, you then jump up and you toss the enemy aside, killing them in that throw. And you even have control to aim that throw. So you can use it as a way to take on enemy mobs and kind of mitigate crowd control. But you can't necessarily do that with these flower enemies, because they'll unbloom their petals to a sharp point and hurt you on contact. So the only way around that is you actually have another attack that, sometimes I notice, especially if I watch long plays, a lot of people don't really mess with all that much, just because it doesn't kill. So people tend to forget that it's something that you can do. Tomba does have a weapon known as the Blackjack. In fact, the evolution of it I mentioned earlier, the Grapple Jack, makes it play more of a vital role in gameplay because you're going to use it for platforming.
Right.
That variation of it, though, doesn't really have attack capabilities, but your initial one, the blackjack, does. It's a swinging mace. It really puts you at a point where, like, you're going to have to stun these enemies and stun them to a point where, like, you use that window of them seeing stars to jump up, get some good footing, and then dare yourself to, like, you know, did I make it in time to then plant another jump on top of them before they, you know, recover and then go into that stupid defensive spike thing that, like, fucking sends me flying. But there are things around it, and I think that goes right back to Fujiwara's roots of, like, putting some bullshit skill test in the game and kind of emphasizing, like, this is an action game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like I said, I did not beat the game. I don't think I got the grapple jack, so I can't speak to that. I noticed that too. Like I forget if I told you this off mic or if I said it on air because my memory is Swiss cheese. But I did watch some of the what do you call it, special edition playthrough. I just wanted to see what that was all about. And I did notice that too. Folks forgot about that. I was kind of the opposite. Like I was using the heck out of that thing because you can throw the blackjack and the boomerang and etc. You can throw that stuff directionally and not just cardinal. Yeah. You can go northwest. You can go south. Well, no, actually, you can't jump and throw down, and at least in Tomba 1. But you can throw at an upward angle, which is extremely useful because if you've got a bird coming at you and you want just to buy time, you can stun that sucker with your blackjack by throwing it. Yep. The blackjack, that is. That's an extraordinarily useful tool. And I'm with you. I saw folks, you know, just trying to jump because, like you said, it kills. And it's like, yeah, it kills, but, like, you know, this is
you
so
got
much
more that
convenient.
you can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just weird because, like, look at, like, Super Mario Brothers 3. Mario's primary form of offense is he jumps on top of enemies. But then when you get a power-up, like Fire Flower or the Tanuki Leaf, and you can, like, spin smash with your raccoon tail or light some fucking Goomba on fire, you'll see players will start gravitating towards that as an option of attack in addition to jumping. And so here, like, that dichotomy with a protagonist like Tomba who has permanent access to both, yet because it doesn't automatically kill on contact, they kind of just forget or just rule it out of their mind. I'm like, whatever.
I had mentioned in an edit, I'm sure, because I forgot to mention this up top, that, you know, we're not going to do a beat by beat for this because it's just not that kind of a game. Mm-hmm. Before we get to music and sound, there is something that I think is mechanically relevant that we should talk about, and that is a defining feature of what makes Tomba Tomba, and that is the event system. Yes. Very much like the lifeblood of this game, and there is a lot of them. And the design philosophy behind it, I really appreciate. Now, in the moment, I wasn't always having a grand time with it, but that largely ties into stuff we've already talked about, like the ambiguity we didn't talk about that, the crypticness of what to do. Some of the ambiguity with looking in your event log and the name of the event. Like, the name of the quest is, I can't swim. And it's like, okay, that doesn't tell me what to do. You know, I know what the goal is, but where do I go? Or, you know, stuff like that. That was maybe not the best example, but these goals, these are what will progress you through the story and give you all of the side content. Fujiwara talks about these in that 97 interview. The questions posed to him: during the course of play, multiple events will pop up at the same time, and sometimes it's hard to know where to start. And he answers, Fujiwara does, saying, quote, essentially your big goal is laid out for you, so you can focus on that. But you can also start with any of the smaller events that you think you're able to tackle. The decision is completely dependent on the player, so you can start with any event that pops up. You can start with the easy ones and give up on the more challenging ones. Of course, there are mandatory events which you must clear in order to continue the story, so you can keep progressing as far as you're able, and when you get stuck, come back and see what else there is to do. Ending that quote. And this is, I'm just summarizing some other stuff I read from him. one of the things that he did, that he was thinking about when he designed it this way, is player expression. And that's how I'm describing it. How he described it is, you had mentioned replayability, Georgie, and Fujiwara was thinking about that too, insofar as, you don't have to do most of these quests if you don't want to. You can beat the game. But then if you come back and you take the time to do them, now you can beat the game in a whole new way. For example, you mentioned the running, the animal dash, I think it's called. That is a missable upgrade. As far as I know, you don't need it to finish the game.
Right.
Or at least you didn't need it as far as I got. And you get it 100 feet from where you start out, technically. I mean, you have to get an item and then come back there. But it's all done within that first area, and you can miss it. And I did for a very long time, but I went back and got it. What that does is it gives the players greater expression on how they want to beat the game. You can just go through and do all the basics, or you can take the time to go through these events, do it, get the upgradable stuff, get new equipment, level up. There is technically a kind of leveling system. And then suddenly you have new means with which to get to the end of the game. That's a player expression idea, and that's cool as hell. I think that's awesome.
Oh yeah, that is awesome. And I'm sorry, I just wanted to kind of interject that I see what you mean by missable, but because there's about 137 quests overall, and there's actually 2 of them, in my opinion, that fall under missable. And when I think of missable, I think of you have a invisible time frame in which you can complete it, and if you move past that time frame, then you can't. You can always get the animal dash.
Gotcha.
You can get before you even reach the end of the game, if you for whatever reason decide, and actually at some point you may need to get it at. I want to say the animal dash is something that you're gently steered towards, just because it works as a catalyst with the character involved to do other side quests that he gets involved with. But yes, no, I know what you mean, that there are events that you can completely not even bother with and reach the end and hit the credits.
I was using missable as a synonym for optional. You were using missable more appropriately, with a time frame.
There are 2, actually. And the weirdest thing is the parameters in which I've actually learned, as somebody who's very familiar, there is an invisible priority of objectives to complete, where if you accidentally complete certain objectives ahead of this one, you'll even lock it out from accessibility. That I'm referring to is the Jan series of events, to where he is a character that you first run into in the starting area, because his main thing is he's a ninja that hides.
Yeah.
And at some point when you do find him, you then run into his family through curious means, which I won't specify, and where you need to deliver an item to him in order to then open up other series of objectives. So by missing out on that, if you don't get that opportunity, then you don't get the opportunity to get the other items, and you are SOL. Unless you load an initial save point of your playthrough, you'll have to start over. So I found that interesting. And what's even funnier about those series, if you complete them and everything's kosher, that's how you unlock them in your subsequent playthrough into Tomba 2. Tomba 2 will recognize that you completed those events and will only open up continued events involving that character if you've done so. Otherwise, those events in Tomba 2 are completely locked out and, again, prevent you from getting 100%. So if you ever thought to yourself when you beat Tomba 2, what the fuck? I did everything. Why do I have such a low... That's the reason. You needed to actually play Tomba 1 and finish it top to bottom and get that full percentage, so that way you would then get the opportunity to do other events in Tomba 2, which I find fucking fascinating. I love games or concepts that have carried that notion, like Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, or the lock-on tech of Sonic 3 and Knuckles. Intersection of multiple titles to create one wholesome experience is so fucking cool. But yeah, I love the event system. I wish that there was a little bit more finesse around it, because for as flexible and is open to player working as it is, or player navigation and player completion, when you have something as glaring as that, to the point where it does put some caveats on how you go about things, I think that's a technical oversight that didn't get fixed, by the way, with Special Edition. It's still very much like that.
I think desiring more finesse is a fantastic way to put it. Because this complaint from me, it's purely taste. Like, I don't think this is a poor game design decision necessarily, but I read some random Reddit comment and they were like, yeah, if you're ever lost, just look at the description for the event or look at the description for the item. It'll give you a little hint. It's like, no, it doesn't. What are you talking about? It's just like, oh, I've got a dirty mirror. This is a mirror that doesn't show a reflection, ? That doesn't, that's a description of the item, but it doesn't help me, and the events are basically the same. That comes down to your taste on whether or not that level of cryptic is okay with you, and that's fine. I would have loved it if we can continue using finesse, if that system was just a little more fleshed out here's a better one, or the map worked a little better. And I'm trying not to view this through a 2026 lens because that's completely unfair. But the map, is
not clear.
It works. It's there.
Yeah, but like in terms of like the pathfinding and where you're trying to route along, especially around the Haunted Mansion area, and when you later you do a Dark Souls ass Miyazaki unlock of shortcuts that can make navigation a little smoother, I feel it almost complicates it. To the point where like you'll even see like more veteran or seasoned players, they'll just stick with fast travel just because at some point it's just easier to wrap your head around and kind of plot your next course of action.
I don't think I found any of those. Or wait, no, I think is one of them the dude that takes you on the boat all the way back to the beginning that doesn't give you a chance to say no and made me extraordinarily angry?
So that is a shortcut, yes, but so there is a shortcut in Bacchus Village that takes you straight to the Mushroom Forest. So in the background, that door that's just seemingly there.
Yeah,
that's a door to Bacchus Village.
Oh,
so that's
cool.
just There's tons of little. There's another one, Charity Fountain. It takes you to another area of Phoenix Mountain.
Oh, I did find that.
Yeah, and then there's also the slide, which takes you to where you're talking about the boat trip that gives you then access to... Well, no, the boat trip is from Mushroom Forest to the left. I'm trying to think of what the slide does. But yeah, there's tons of little areas. There's a raft in the jungle that also takes you back to the starting area's lake, as well as the waterfall from the underwater city can take you right back to the jungle. So there are a bunch of little shortcuts. Once you unlock certain parameters within the Dwarf Forest, and where you can block the underwater sewage plug that can also route you back to the jungle, I want to say somewhat, and that's the entrance to Charity Fountain. There are little intersection points everywhere. So again, to the credit of what you're trying to explain, the map can actually get way more dense and way more complicated than you could ever imagine. But thankfully, that's why you are given an opportunity. And I don't want to spoil too much, so I'll try to be as obtuse as possible. Did you complete the missions with Baron?
I know. That's the dog, right?
Yes, that is the dog.
I don't know how many there are. I got him the help, the herbs, the medical herbs. I got him those. But which, by the way, I'm glad that you said that. I did not want to forget this. There are NPCs in this game that you can talk to, and they're funny NPC-ass things. You come back to the Dwarf Village later on. You just talk to this guy, and he goes, "You saved my son. We're friends now." And that's it. That's funny to me. But the first time you meet Baron is an injured dog. You take him back to the Dwarf Village. You give him to the local doctor. When you talk to her, as you're handing her off, she introduces herself and she says, "Yeah, I'm a doctor. Come back to me." Or actually, this is before you give her the dog. "I'm a doctor. Come back to me if you ever need to see me for anything." And at the time, I had 1 health. So I was like, oh, great. Maybe she can do like the old man does and she can heal me. I talked to her, the doctor, mind you, and she goes, "I'm busy. Bother me another time." I'm like, "You're the doctor, man." That was the time. But anyway, sorry. That I remember that.
No. That's good. It's so weird because like some NPC dialogue has such an intent and others are just so lazy. Like I love that like the old like farmer man who kind of walks you through the whole time just like, what's up with your pink hair, dude?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? Is that dye? Like, what's up?
There are a lot of little video gamey flourishes like that. Like when you help the early mission, you help this 100-year-old man, the sprightliest of old men that you find in this game. When you help him, you gather his chicks, and he's like, "Oh, thank you for gathering my chicks, but where are they?" And you just barf them out of your mouth, and he's like, "Where were you keeping them in your stomach?" And you know what? Never mind. I don't want to know. And it's like, well, yeah, it's a video game. Where else would he keep them? It's so good.
I do. Yeah, no, there are a ton of different moments like that. But back to the point of Baron, and I won't say much more. Completing Baron does reward you with a much more accessible means of travel, and that's as much as I'll say.
Okay.
But stuff like that, like you do yield rewards. I will say that I think at some point the ambitions of the event system kind of got a little out of reach, and the material gain from it didn't really go beyond, like I said, seeing a number go up, because a lot of the late game rewards, by the time that you get it nearing the end, really have little to no effect on your ability to get through the final end game, than just like ignoring that they were there to begin with. But yeah, I love the event system. I just believe, and again, kind of using the template of Super Mario 64 to an extent in hinting or cluing players on, where to chase down the next star when you choose the objective, I think was the kind of vibe that they were going for. But like some of that shit was just esoteric as fuck, like just flat out. And it's not only just an action of bumping and grinding against any potential point of interest, it's talking to literally everyone, sometimes twice, sometimes three times. Like another event involves you taking out monsters in the mushroom forest, and it doesn't do the best job of telegraphing that you're doing the right thing. Again, I want to avoid spoiling, but I think I'd be doing everybody a favor, because this would require anybody to go to fucking GameFAQs. I'm sorry. But there are two monsters. The only way to damage them, again, as we mentioned, the main form of attack, jumping and hurling, you have to throw the monsters into each other to damage them both. And you'll kind of get that that's the thing you have to do, because the AI will immediately kick in and be like, no, you don't. And just fucking like dodge and swerve on the last second and miss. So you have to get really, really tricky and make sure you can time your throws in just the precise window. But even when you have them make contact once, they just sort of damage and bubble about. There's no chime. There's no like Zelda, nothing. So you don't know if that's the thing you have to do. You have to do it 3 times. And then that point, you'll hear the and the whole time you're just like, the fuck, dude? Nothing? You couldn't have even given me flavor text? So again, there's moments like that aren't great.
That's the Monster Hunt quest, I think it's titled, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And which plays into several other quests. Again, I if anything, I do love that everything is a spider graph. Completing one quest sometimes just opens up 4 more.
All right, before we wrap it up, we should talk music and sound. And I say sound because this game, you might not expect it, but it does have voice acting. The voice acting is a little different in the different variations. That's not the right word. The different releases. I saw the US listed as, quote, full voice acting. I don't know that that's the best descriptor, but it does have the most of it. That's right, Georgie, right?
Yeah, the voice acting is done primarily through the animation scenes, which, dude, I wish I knew more of the artists, but again, going back to like the moments that really evoke like this feeling of Dragon Ball, it's definitely in these like animated scenes that kind of set the premise and tone of why you're doing what you're doing in Tomba.
So my experience comes from Tomba 2, which will factor into the music as well. Playing that game first, that is. And Tomba 2's voice acting is charmingly amateur. Very charmingly, very amateur. And it's pretty similar here. Most noticeably, so the first instance you're going to get of this if you're playing the US version is when you meet the 100-year-old man. Tomba is going to meet several increasingly older, strange men that have vast knowledge and tell him what to do, as one does. And the 100-year-old man is the spryest of them all. And when you meet him, he sort of lays out what's going on with these pigs. The quote is short, so I'm just going to read it. He says, "This was once a beautiful, peaceful land until 7 evil pigs came. They suddenly appeared and used their powers to change this land into an ugly world. For some reason, the evil pigs seem to be collecting gold. I bet your grandpa's bracelet that was stolen by the evil pigs was made out of gold too. The 7 evil pigs are hiding somewhere in this world. If you find them, I'm sure you'll be able to find your bracelet as well. Just remember, be very careful." That's all. It is mixed so low in compared to the music, and I think it's also in the way in which the voice actor speaks. It is so hard to hear. I had to watch this like 3 times in cutscene on YouTube after I saw it in the game to even hear it. So I want to insert that bit real quick.
This was once a beautiful, peaceful land until 7 evil pigs came. They suddenly appeared and used their powers to change this land into an ugly world. For some reason, the evil pigs seem to be collecting gold. I bet your grandpa's bracelet that was stolen by the Tomba pigs was made out of gold, too. The 7 evil pigs are hiding somewhere in this world. If you find them, I'm sure you'll be able to find your bracelet as well. Just remember, be very careful.
I will say that this was thankfully something that was addressed in the special edition. So
Yes.
the sound balancing is far more coherent. But yeah, I don't really understand, and I wish I was a little bit more familiar with it. And it's something that I kind of set to the side. I'm like, I should learn more about it. But just because this went on into the early aughts, even like Sonic Adventure 2 comes fresh to mind with like its sound balancing.
So bad.
The mixing, the active mixing, especially, I think it has a lot to do with it affecting the ability to compress the entirety of data for the game. And it just that in and of itself is also weird, because I remember there was a lot of controversy with like a specific Tiger Woods release from EA not meeting the data quota for pressing the game onto the disc. So they put dummy data, which was a common practice, but the dummy data that they put was the fucking pilot episode of South Park.
I remember that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And it was accessible if you put the disc in a computer, and it caused like a fucking big old like controversy that required like the game to be completely reissued and redone. That's the only like conclusion I can come up with when it comes to like sound design and how that's done within the constraints of tech. But yeah, thankfully there aren't a whole lot of instances where you have to deal with poor sound mixing. Like in the game sense, like within like the stage themes and the sound effects, like that's all like very well and done. But yeah, there's no other voice acting outside of these scenes, which I believe there's really only 3 scenes. Well, actually, there's 4 scenes, but there's only 2 of the 4 that have voice acting.
Yeah, it's not.
I want to say that.
Yeah, and you know when we lovingly bash on it for being poorly mixed, amateur voice actors, whatever. It doesn't detract from the game one little bit. It's one of those things where you hear it and you kind of laugh and you're like, we were doing the best we could back then,
Yep.
But speaking of the best that we could, I genuinely think the music is quite good. But this is interesting to me because my first Tomba experience was Tomba 2, and being in the United States, Tomba 2, the US version, that is to say the international version, was done by the composer Ashif Hakik, who passed away a couple of years ago now. Also did Crash Team Racing Nitro, among some others. Tomba 2's soundtrack, the international version, is phenomenal. It's one of my favorites on the PlayStation. It's extraordinarily good. This, and by the way, the Japanese version of Tomba 2, Shina Ozawa, this was done, obviously, by a different composer, even still, Harumi Fujita. I think she did a fantastic job. I think this music has this sort of youthfulness to it, like an excited youthfulness. It's playful, it's energetic. Something that I wrote down that I was thinking as I was just listening to the OST, I think, back then, especially like the mid to late 90s, video games back then, the audience was mostly probably young boys, or you could even just say young kids. And kids don't care about subtlety. They don't care about refinement. They certainly don't care about leitmotifs. They can't even pronounce that. They don't even know which end of the sandbox to pee in. They care about fun. And this music is fun. It's simple. It's singable. It's got life. I'll read what I wrote. It's a hoot. It's a blast, man.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Funny enough, like my favorite theme out of all of the themes in the game are the evil pig themes when you're in the boss fight. Like just hearing like that cacophony of horns and go.
There's a lot of, and this is something they took into Tomba 2, I guess they took inspiration from Fujita, a lot of pitched percussion in this. You're going to get steel drums, you're going to get marimbas, xylophones. It's that sort of, it's celebration music. This isn't the kind of music you go to an orchestra for. This is like everybody in town has gathered and they're going to play and have a good time. It's really nice.
Yeah, I couldn't concur more. Again, there's never like a bop that like kind of overstayed its welcome. There are standouts. Like I will say that one of the more like epic is a little too strong, but the one where a sense of adventure really sets in is when you're first going through the stormy version of Phoenix Mountain, and just that ascension, that like effervescent before it starts going into like the danger. Yeah, like there's definitely a whimsy in the composition of its music and sound, and also I, if anything, always hold on to the sound design of Tomba more than the music itself, especially like all of the grunts and like little yells that Tomba does, like it definitely puts across like the belief that like this is just some fair little boy just trying to make the best of his situation. I definitely will say though that the presentation is all around great, and I think even in terms of like revisiting it from the lens of 2026 as a 32-bit game, and like the blend of like old 16-bit sensibilities with 32-bit tech, again going back to the use of texture wrapping, the use of polygonal against 2D sprite rendering, and coupling that with a bubbly presentation both visually and audibly, it definitely creates a balance. Like you will be able to perk your senses up when you hear a certain track or see a certain visual or pan from the camera that really does put across like the wildness of Tomba's presentation.
Oh yeah, I totally agree with you. Going back to, you had said nothing overstays its welcome, and you also mentioned the blend and 32-bit. I'm glad that you mentioned those things all together, because that's one of the first things I noticed with the soundtrack. And by the way, yes, the yells from Tomba are terrific. I love them. I love hearing our little guy just screaming his head off and yelling, having the time of his life while he beats the shit out of pigs. So this game does, with its soundtrack, a classic video game thing. They composed short loops. Every track on this album is going to be like, I don't know, 40 seconds to 75 seconds, 90 seconds, absolute max. And the idea is that they just loop, and that's fine. One of the things is that not every track filled me with happiness and joy and vigor and the idea of communal merrymaking. Some of them were extraordinarily grating, and it turns out they continue when you pause the game if you're trying to take notes for a podcast. The chief offender that drove me insane was the music that you're hearing now, probably in the 100-Year-Old Man's House. It's a pleasant little melody. It's fine, but here's the thing. One of the things that I love about this soundtrack too is that it's not overly refined and produced. This track sounds like a middle school orchestra playing this little theme. And overall, I think this soundtrack benefits from that. It benefits from the fact that it doesn't sound like, stodgy orchestra musicians sitting down to play like arrangements of the Beatles. It sounds like regular people playing and raw. It's the energy and the fun that matters. Killer, love it. However, when it loops to drive me specifically insane while taking podcast notes, it's a special kind of hell to just hear a repeated pizzicato string melody, 8 measures only, repeated ad nauseum by young, earnest little string players. It drove me mad.
I'm really big on video game soundtracks. In fact, like a whole other subset of my hobby involved with video games is collecting soundtracks on vinyl. In terms of like kind of looking at like if I were presented an opportunity to buy the soundtrack for Tomba, I would likely get it just because I love Tomba, but it wouldn't be for the love of the music. If I were to pick, which soundtrack I enjoy more, it's definitely the second one. It's funny that you brought that up too, because I thought you were kind of transitioning into the drama that Limited Run ran into with Tomba 2's release.
I was not aware that there was drama.
There was drama. So Tomba 2's release used the Japanese soundtrack.
Oh, I do remember that. That's right. Yes.
Yeah, but like people were fucking mad. And initially, both Whoopi and Limited Run were trying to explain that like this is just due to licensing issues. We're sorry. Dude, everybody review bombed the game like for user scores like across Meta and Steam to the point where I think it was less than a week they patched in the Ashik soundtrack. So it is that beloved. It immediately instills like this sense of wonder that like really helped carry like the experience of Tomba 2. I don't know if I can really say the same thing. Like I like the song that plays in Village Beginnings. I like the race track. I do enjoy, like I mentioned, Stormy Mountain variation. And then also even getting the wine and like the like somber soliloquy there. It's good music, but I think it's it does what it needs to do in complementing. It doesn't stand out. Tomba 2, it stands the fuck out.
And I wonder too, I'm just totally spitballing. I have not thought about this. Please forgive me. This might be a terrible take, but I wonder too if just thinking about what I remember from Tomba 2's soundtrack, and I hesitate to say this, it does sound a little bit like it maintains the energy and the like ephebic raucousness of Tomba 1, but it's just a little better composed. And that's not a knock on Harumi Fujita. Composers, writers, artists of all stripes. It's their job. Sometimes they have to put out work for a paycheck, and it's not that they hate the work or that they're phoning it in, but you can't make everything your magnum opus. And I imagine if they told Harumi Fujita, hey, like, we need each of these to be no more than a minute, maybe a minute, 15 seconds max, preferably loopable. This is for children. That's not going to be like the Symphony No. 9, And I just wonder if they didn't give Tomba 2's composer, the quite as much constraints. I don't know. It just sounds like more freedom.
I really don't know. And again, it could just be tech capacity because, yes, the fact that all the music does contain the trend of seamless looping in short verses I don't know if that was done for technical reasons or just because maybe it wasn't something that, because I will say the sound design definitely has more thought behind it, and there I will dare say variability in like throughout the playthrough start to finish than that of the music. The music does definitely feel like an afterthought, but as far as the reason behind that, who knows, man. Nobody told fucking David Wise to like go ham on like the revision of like an old Nintendo mascot being a fucking gorilla on an island that's also named Country. But David Wise, he set fire on those sound chips and like did so in such a way that is still haunting people's TikToks to this day, and they don't even fucking know. They don't even know. So, you know, who's to say like what the mindset of a composer is and like why they go about doing things the way they do. But they can leave impressions. I will be honest and say that, like, you know, the soundtrack is one that doesn't leave the most, but I still have some bops that I do enjoy. Is it okay if I include one of the things that I just don't like about the game, and I promise I'll keep it brief, because it's weird that we didn't cover it in the gameplay section.
Before you do, I do just want to say real quick, I do not subscribe to that opinion. I don't think the music sounds like an afterthought. I do think it's for what it is, for the constraints she was probably given. I think it's pretty good. I also want to shout out, if you don't mind, among others, you had mentioned the Evil Pig Boss music, which I also noted down too. Also, too, used them both. Why not? The dwarf village / the forest outside of that before the infection clears. So terrific, especially the forest where there's like it's almost like a Russian polka klezmer mashup kind of deal.
Oh yeah, I can absolutely see that.
Awesome. Bacchus Village also has great stuff. Clock Tower. Hoo boy. There's some stuff that sounds almost like a hoedown in here. Anyways, yes, that is all. I just wanted to get that out there. Yes. What did we gloss over?
I guess I'm going to present it in the form of a question. And by the way, maybe afterthought strong. It didn't stick out to me. We'll leave it at that. What did you think about the boss fights of Tomba? Because in my opinion, this is always a big point of contention with anybody who brings it up.
A bit of a letdown.
Yeah, it's poop from a butt, right?
They're just all it's just all the same. It's you just kind of grab them and throw them, and that's sort of it. It's not even like it does not feel. I don't want to say half baked. But I kind of do.
It doesn't feel satisfying.
Yeah. Do you know why? Like, was that intentional?
And I'm trying to remember because I can't, like, I know we like to cite. And so that's why this is not something that I believe can be 100% cited. But in the various interviews or opportunities that Fujiwara had, like, interviewed about the game, I want to say I remember reading something that he felt that the process of locating the pig bag and finding the pig door was like an aspect of the boss fight itself, in that it played into the challenge of said pig, and that's why like they all have their, and even then, like, not all pigs fight the same or behave the same. Some have like area of effect, like screen attack, like screen filling attacks, and some play within constrained arenas that make it a little bit more annoying, but it's all the same. You grab them and toss them in a sack, and some are definitely much easier than others. But it's very much like I've noticed that when I did watch playthroughs of the special edition, the rewind got abused, I think, the most during these fights.
Sure.
Just because they people just wanted to nail down the perfect throw and just kind of end it before anything else. And I'm like, I find that kind of sad. I'm like, dude, like, this is supposed to be like one of the more epic parts of a video game, and like it's often like the most like ugh. and I can't help but, I don't disagree. Yeah. Even again, from start to finish, from the very end, it's all the same.
I think that is a really bold design strategy to say the process of finding the boss is like a boss fight in and of itself. Like the boss is the exploration. So I'm going to make the boss, which is sort of colloquially known as the challenging thing in a video game, I'm going to make that less so. That's a very bold strategy, and I respect it. I just don't think it worked out the way that he was hoping.
No, which is why the process is far more different in Tomba 2. And where these boss fights actually feel like boss fights.
Yeah. Yeah. That was a bit of a letdown. You're right.
Again, it's more about the journey than the destination with this game sometimes.
Yeah. I think that's a really clever way to put it, especially with Tomba. The journey of going through each of these events, of going through each of these locales, finding the events that you would like to do, finding the ones that you do not want to sink the time into. I think that is probably what Fujiwara was hoping for, along with, the idea, it's fun. The characters do exactly what you tell them to do, action game style, like that. I think he would be pleased to know that was a takeaway that you found and that I agree with you. I think that is a large part of it. That's also why we're not doing a beat by beat with this, because, we told you the story setup and the story payoff is, you get your bracelet back. That's the story. The game is exploring. The game is being in the universe. I think that's a really great way to say it, and I agree with you. I hope this does inspire folks to go out and play it, whether it's emulated, remaster, special edition, original hardware. If you really want to throw down 100+ bones, that's cool too. If you don't think it's a great game, I think you will think it is at the very least worth a playthrough. I think you will at the very least see it as a competent game, even if you don't like the design.
It's an interesting game that will absolutely leave an impression upon you when you're done playing it, regardless of whatever time you boot it up. Whether you booted it up in its prime, you boot it up this year or any of the years into the next, you will not forget your time with the game. And if a game can do that, if it can leave you feeling like that, it did its job.
Excellently said, Georgie boy. I think that is a great way to end the episode. I hope folks have liked this discussion. Went a little bit abroad of Tomba, but I had a feeling it might, and I think it was pretty productive, and I think it's going to spawn some new topic episodes out of it as well, which I am fairly excited to consider and talk about. Tomba is very fun. You should check it out on my recommendation. You should check it out on Georgie's recommendation. And speaking of Georgie, this is where I would like to give you the floor and let you tell everybody about what you've got going on your show. Well, I'll let you introduce it. You do the honors. Tell us about yourself, a little bit about your PPR.
So my PPR is Press Pause Radio. We've been active since 2009. And if you like a dumb video game podcast filled with fart jokes and old men and the occasional other spectrums of gender and color and everyone else that we want to welcome in this wide world of video game fanatics, enthusiasts, and other dipshits who like fucking pushing buttons and things going bzz, blah. That's what you'll find with our website. You can find us at www.presspauseradio.com, and you can find us on nearly every podcatcher. We talk about what we've been playing as of mostly, but also we do full-fledged feature topic discussions like what we did with our most recent episode regarding Capcom over the years. We also occasionally go into games clubs, and we do have a few cooking that I'm absolutely trying to organize with listeners and peers alike. You can find us on our YouTube, where we also do short Let's Plays. We actually have one that's been in the production can a little longer than I like to admit, but Rick here and I played through Virtual Fighter 3 TB for the Dreamcast. We sat down and really got the chance to do that. Also on our website, you can find reviews of old and new games, but also editorials. As mentioned, we are launching a new editorial feature called Dungeon Rings, and where games that we complete to 100% iota of like no stone left unturned. We talk about our experiences there, and I am doing one currently on Tomba, revisiting it. thank you again, Rick, for having me on. And I just love that, PPR and PPR got together. It's been one of the making. We're going to definitely have you back on, my dude. Speaking of which, we started off the year with Rick on our holiday episode where he guest starred along with Kate Emily from No Small Games, and where we talked about Xmas memories.
I almost forgot about that. That was you did me a great kindness and agreed to edit out a very embarrassing 10-second pause where I just forgot how to speak. Yeah, I had a great time talking about the holiday memories one. It's a very comfy sort of conversation to have, and I really enjoyed talking Virtua Fighter. I have very little experience with Virtua Fighter 3 TB, or 3th as it's known by me. And if you do want to check that out, and I encourage you to, it is a good show, you can check it out in the episode description. All of your PPR stuff is in the episode description. There's got to be a better way to make that joke. Anyway, you can find all of Georgie's links, all of Press Pause Radio's links in the episode description. They will be linked there. You can find links to our stuff as well, to the free Discord server. You can hang out there if you'd like, to the Patreon if you feel so inclined and are feeling extra generous. Of course, that's optional. You don't have to. And that about does it for today. Thank you, everybody, for sticking around and giving us your time. We're very glad that you were able to join us today. Thank you, Georgie, for the first and what I hope is not the last time on the show. And that's about it. We've bagged our last pig, and we're going to hang up our bags here. That's what Tomba does. Sure, why not? I don't know, man. I'm your host that doesn't know, as usual. My name is Rick, as always. Thanks, folks, for signing off for now. We'll catch you next time.